Another way that Abram made a marriage mistake or failed was that he failed to be a spiritual leader. He failed to be a spiritual leader. That's one of the biggest mistakes that many of us make. Many men in the United States of America, at least, have delegated to their wife all spiritual leadership and responsibility in the family. It'll be the wife who makes sure they go to church. It's the wife that prays for the kids. It's the wife that keeps up with what's going on with them. And so in Abram's life, we see he told half truths. Well, she's my sister. So he didn't tell the full truth. And then, another thing that he ends up doing is he blames God for his problems. He says in Genesis chapter 20 and verse 13, it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house. So as a spiritual leader, he is now, instead of obeying God and honoring God, he's blaming God. He's doubting God. He's using people and taking advantage of them. He is attempting to accomplish his spiritual goals in the flesh. If you recall, Abraham and Sarah will have a discussion, and Sarah will say, why don't you take my handmaiden Hagar, and you can do with her, you can treat her like a wife, and the baby will be born, and we'll call that our baby. I am pretty certain, because I know women well, I've been married almost 50 years, and I'm pretty sure Sarah wanted him to look at her and say, oh, don't be crazy, honey. You're worth more to me than 1,000 children. I would never do that. But instead, Abraham said, well, okay, that's a good idea. Glad you came up with it. That makes it easier for me to do it, and I'll just go out and do that. And he took Hagar as his wife, and they had relations, and a baby will be born. So there's a problem there that he is not the spiritual leader in his home. He is failing to walk with God and do things God's way. Sarah also is failing to be a good spiritual motivator or spiritual challenge. She gave him bad advice when she told him to go in with Hagar. I personally think she might have been hoping he wouldn't take her up on the advice. I know, it's like when Betty and I get ready to go somewhere to eat, I'll say, well, where do you want to eat? She said, it doesn't matter. And I say, okay, we'll go to Waffle House or McDonald's. And then she says, well, I won't go there. So she really does know where she wants to go, but she won't tell me. And, sometimes that's that man and woman conversation thing that goes on there, and it's kind of hard. And but she gave bad advice, and she should have been motivating him to honor God and serve God, but she wasn't. She opened the marriage doors for another woman to come into their marriage. And that's a horrible thing to consider having happened, but she did. She opened the doors, let Hagar in, and she gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his wife. Genesis 16:3. That's a horrible thing to do. Every one of us ought to protect our marriage and protect our relationship with our spouse so that there's never any of that goes on with anyone else.